We've compared the brand new OnePlus 5T against the iPhone X, but perhaps an even better and fairer comparison would be the OnePlus 5T versus the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. So the phone obviously is a lot cheaper, but being a flagship killer smartphone, the question is, does it kill the flagship? So as you might know, the OnePlus 5T retails at just under $500 or up to $560 if you go for the upper tier storage model, whereas the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 is about $930. But considering the phone has been released for a bit now, you can find it for closer to $900. A couple of things to bear in mind though. This is not my full review. My opinions of the OnePlus 5T are going to come properly in a couple of days' time. And also, it would mean so much to me if you could subscribe to the channel, because we do have a lot more content coming up on this phone, and also a OnePlus 5T giveaway in December. So let's start by quickly highlighting some of the similarities and differences when it comes to features. Both phones have a headphone jack, which unfortunately has become a feature these days, and they also both support Bluetooth 5.0, which means they can connect to two different Bluetooth devices like a headphone and a speaker at the same time. Both also support face scanning as an authentication method, and combining this with rear-mounted fingerprint scanners have a multitude of options to get into your phone. Unfortunately, the one on the Galaxy Note 8 is not only quite difficult to reach because it's so high up the phone, but it's also very small. It's got an unusual shape and is sometimes tough to differentiate from the camera, whereas the 5Ts is much easier to feel for and a little bit more differentiated. So on the whole, it's going to be a better experience. But this is where the Galaxy Note 8 pulls ahead a little bit, because as well as that, there is also an iris scanner here. Now this is a little bit slower than a face scanner, but is a little bit more secure. But you will find that a lot of people, just because of the lack of speed, they don't actually use it at all. But this phone also has IP68 water and dust resistance, for which the 5T has no certification whatsoever, and it also has wireless charging and micro SD card support. There's also the S Pen 2, which opens up a lot of possibilities when it comes to things you can do on the phone. And so, whilst none of these advantages over the 5T could be considered essential, they do cover a lot of niches. Whether you're the kind of person who needs the micro SD card so you can store all your media on your device, or you're the kind of person who needs the water resistance so you can watch videos in the shower, or you're the kind of person who needs the wireless charging just because you've grown so accustomed to it with your past phone, the Note 8 has got you covered. But for those specific niches of people, the OnePlus 5T just cannot offer those features. Now amazingly, even though there is a larger display on the front of the Galaxy Note 8, it's actually a narrower phone than the 5T. You can see the side bezels on this phone are almost non-existent, whereas on the 5T they are somewhat still present. Having said that, in terms of every other dimension, in terms of height, thickness and mass, the Note 8 is an unapologetically large phone, and compared to the 5T, it doesn't even feel like they're really in the same size class when it comes to display size. But they are. The 5T is over 1mm thinner and is also over 30 grams lighter. The Note 8's heft is partly due to the decision to house the stylus inside of the phone, but also partly because of the materials used. Speaking of which, the Note 8 is basically a glass and aluminium slab, because it's using aluminium for the frame as opposed to the stainless steel we've seen on the iPhone X. Compared to that phone, it's still a little bit less dense, but it's still bulky and the glass is just as fingerprint prone as ever. But one thing with the Galaxy Note 8 is you do get some nice colour options, and I found from my personal testing that the blue shows up a little bit less fingerprints than the black, and the grey one is even better than the blue. Having said that, if you didn't want to worry about fingerprints at all, the soft touch matte finish on the 5T has pretty much got you covered. Now almost the entire body of this phone is made of pretty much one sheet of anodized aluminium, and that makes it a very lightweight but nonetheless firm phone. I mean, this is the same material that is used to craft airplanes. Okay, but which phone is more powerful? Now we are looking at the base models of both phones just to keep it fair, and on this category, they're more or less identical. The OnePlus 5T and the Galaxy Note 8 in most regions have the Snapdragon 835 and 6GB of RAM, which is still a fair bit in late 2017. However, there are no less than 4 reasons why the OnePlus 5T might well be faster than the Galaxy Note 8. The first of which is that there is an option for an 8GB model. Paying another $60, which is not really a big ask over the base model, you get not only double the storage, but also 8GB of RAM, whereas the Note 8 tops out at 6. Now it may be excessive at this point in time, but it's definitely a good future-proofing feature. On top of that, a subtle but nonetheless relevant statistic is that the processor in this phone is actually overclocked. The Snapdragon 835 in the 5T runs at 2.45GHz compared to 2.35 in the Galaxy Note 8, which is a small and subtle difference, but it's enough to get a few extra frames in any game you play, or a few extra points in any benchmark. Oxygen OS compared to Samsung's TouchWiz just also feels tighter, the animations are slicker, the movements are faster, and also there's far less bloatware on the phone. And the last thing is that the 5T has a far lower resolution display, which of course on balance is not an advantage, but it does help in a few areas, one of them being performance. Having less pixels to push means you can push the pixels that you are pushing at a faster rate. So the OnePlus 5T in a lot of cases will pull ahead for that reason too. In terms of speaker quality, let's just say neither of these phones is going to be an audiophile's dream. They both have a little speaker tucked away in the bottom corner, which is downwards firing, which I guess is better than a backwards firing speaker that we used to see on phones a few years ago, but it's definitely going to be bested by any of the iPhones or the Pixel 2 XL. And then we've got displays, which is always an interesting battle. Whilst the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 has a 6.3-inch 2960 by 1440 display, the OnePlus 5T has a slightly smaller 6-inch 2160 by 1080p display. When you glance at those numbers, it might seem like the Galaxy Note 8 is a little bit sharper, but when you actually do the maths, you realise there are approximately 2 times the number of pixels on the Galaxy Note 8 phone than there are on the OnePlus 5T. So for that audience who's going to inspect their screen really close up, or the kind of people who want to see perfect circles everywhere in the UI, the Galaxy Note 8 is going to be the one for you. Both phones are using AMOLED technology here, which allows for really high levels of contrast and really vibrant colours, and side by side you can really appreciate both displays here. But whilst the 5T has an elongated display with an 18:9 aspect ratio, the Galaxy Note 8 is even taller than that, with an 18.5:9 aspect ratio. So essentially that means when you're scrolling through articles or using applications, the ones that support that display size that is, you'll just get a little bit more content on screen at any one time. Both phones are covered on the front with Gorilla Glass 5, which is good, but the Galaxy Note 8 pulls quite a bit ahead in screen to body ratio, whereas the OnePlus 5T has obviously gone up a lot since the OnePlus 5, sits there with 80.5%, the Galaxy Note 8 has 83.2%, which makes it up there in the top 5 smartphones currently in the market. On top of that, the Samsung also supports HDR10 and it has a 3D touch home button, which means even when the navigation bar is hidden, you can still press into the display and still go home. So whilst the Note almost blows the OnePlus 5T out the water when it comes to display statistics, in terms of battery, it's probably going to swing the other way. Now both phones have an identical capacity of 3,300 mAh, but what's going to be really favouring the 5T here is that the Note 8 has a larger, higher resolution display to push. It's got a heavier UI, TouchWiz compared to Oxygen OS, so that's going to drain more battery too. And also, OnePlus has been very good when it comes to battery optimization. I'm going to call this bit OnePlus magic because if you've watched any one of my battery drain tests, the OnePlus 5 has always won, even when all its specifications would suggest otherwise. Not to mention, whilst the Galaxy Note 8 comes with Samsung's fast charge 15-watt charger, the OnePlus 5T comes bundled with a dash charge 20-watt charger. And again, from everything I've tested with the OnePlus 5, this phone is going to charge quite a significant bit faster than this phone. So let's talk about cameras. And for the front cameras at least, both companies have gone with a very different approach. Whereas the OnePlus 5T has a super high resolution 16 megapixel front camera, it has an aperture of f2.0. The Note 8 on the other hand has half the resolution, but at the same time a significantly wider aperture. So as with most camera statistics, it's difficult to tell what this is going to translate to in terms of real world performance, but so far the 5T is looking competitive. The rear cameras are where an even larger divergence occurs. With the 5T, OnePlus has gone with a 16 megapixel and a 20 megapixel sensor, both with an f1.7 aperture. Samsung on the other hand has two 12 megapixel sensors with an f1.7 and an f2.4 setup. And so whilst in terms of base statistics, things are favouring the 5T, that is not the full story. The Galaxy Note 8 on its primary camera has a larger image sensor, which allows it to use more light in its photos, and so that would suggest you're going to get more noise on the OnePlus 5T. Now both phones of course run Android, but neither of these has managed to receive an Oreo update. Whilst OnePlus has announced that the 5T is getting Oreo just before the end of the year, we have no idea when it comes to the Galaxy Note 8. It's anyone's guess. Samsung doesn't have a very good track record when it comes to rolling out updates. In fact, when it came to their Nougat update, it was about 150 days after Google released the software before Samsung's own phones had it. So guys, that is the full comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 and the OnePlus 5T. I really hope you enjoyed the video and expect a detailed battery drain and battery charge test coming soon on the channel. If you did enjoy it, it would mean so much to me if you could smash that subscribe button below. And with that being said, I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.